The legendary Prince Charming boasted about his public graces, according to a former maid who informed everyone about him. He is now well known as a spoilt, evil son of a king. To learn what Prince Andrew's former maid said about him and why, watch this video through to the end. Now everything becomes sense. He was always bad. He wasn't transformed into a horrible guy. Working with the royal family was Charlotte Briggs' ideal job. She believed that everything would turn out well when she was in love. But this time she was correct. Charlotte was unaware that occasionally circumstances are so dire that a snake egg will only hatch into a snake, regardless of how much you care for it. This is what happened to Prince Andrew. When she entered Prince Andrew's realm, she was just 21 years old. She claimed that although it gave the prestige of serving the monarch and the glamour of palace halls, no one desired her job. It was simple to comprehend. The Duke of York was formerly regarded as a charming guy, yet beneath the gleaming exterior of Buckingham Palace, there dwelt a man whom his own employees openly referred to as arrogant, impolite, and insane. In one of her interviews with the Daily Mail, she wasted no time. She expressed her thoughts about him to him. That wasn't the tone of someone who was attempting to be kind. I couldn't care less about how Prince Andrew feels. He is a horrible, mean man. It was the most truthful story of someone who had endured years of mistreatment. When she told her experiences without the cameras rolling, the world finally saw Andrew for who he truly was. Her initial impression of the Duke was that he was spoiled, sluggish, and easily agitated. According to her, Andrew frequently gave stern orders for tasks that he could have completed on his own. He developed a strong interest in curtains. Instead, he was responsible for lowering thick, ceiling-to-ceiling draperies, which he could handle on his own. A furious outburst resulted from a mistake, if you can call it that, caused by a mere distance between them. Using foul language, Andrew screamed down the hallway as he ran out of his office. He screamed, "Can't you bloody do anything right?" which caused the young girl to cry. It examined the power system that the employees dealt with on a daily basis. Andrew's family did not tolerate errors, no matter how minor. You may get punished for everything. Briggs recalled that she constantly felt like she was being observed while she went about her daily business. "I did everything I could to avoid him," she said candidly. It was difficult to predict his appearance. He became much less angry, but she felt worried about more than simply his rage. It was his peculiar demands, which were so persistent and bothersome that they were almost comical. His collection of toy animals was the most well-known. An older guy clinging to his childhood appeared to be a lovely little quirk from the outside. However, it was a nightmare for those who had to continue. The Duke of York kept a black panther, a toy hippo, and 72 teddy bears. He ensured that they were arranged in a military fashion. Nobody touched them without permission, in addition to specifying which toy should be placed in the front and which in the back. Laminated instructions also informed him where to put his two favorite bears, so they would always watch over his bed. Briggs claimed that she spent an entire day learning this workout on her own. Temper tantrums, which Andrew is prone to having, could occur at any time. His bedroom appeared to be a shrine to his frailty. The royal crest pillows needed to be positioned precisely in the center of the mattress after it had been flipped over. It was necessary to lay out his panties so they were completely straight. The toy animals were to be shown, then taken down before he went to sleep, and reassembled upon his awakening. The rest of the crew, including Briggs, frequently pondered what kind of man would want this therapy and what it revealed about him. On this, the press moved swiftly. By depicting an adult prince who was trapped in a state of delayed maturation and required young maids to soothe him and protect his teddy bears, it later profited from similar tales. But that wasn't hilarious at all to Briggs. She felt as though she had to tread carefully every day. The charm he attempted to project in public was a far cry from the concept of a prince, sobbing like a child over drapes and animals. When he spoke to other employees, it got worse. Briggs claimed that he was not grateful or courteous to palace servants, in contrast to Prince Philip, Charles, and even Edward, whom she recalled as being courteous and respectful. Andrew was the only one capable of such cruelty. These were not made-up stories. Other former employees made similar remarks. According to one former maid, in order to remind her of her position, Andrew had to stand directly by her as she hurried across the room to draw the curtains. He was described by another as being aloof and patronizing in even the simplest exchanges. The futility of these revelations, however, was even more painful. The issues produced by his brothers were not Andrew's to handle. He would not rule as king. Those beneath him had to respect him despite his job being, at best, ceremonial and, at worst, indulgent. Charlotte Briggs's honesty was not limited to a man with a short fuse or immature tendencies. It was about a pattern. A man who enjoyed demeaning others, who viewed service as servitude rather than assistance, and who created an environment so poisonous that working in the palace was intolerable. And this was only the beginning. Actually, no. This was just the beginning. Charlotte had some knowledge about Andrew. When they were very little, it all started. From the beginning, Andrew's personality was distinct from his brother's, and not in a positive manner. Andrew appeared to be much less innocent. Anne was obstinate but intelligent, and Charles was quiet and enjoyed reading. The king was cruel when he played, as many people who worked in the palace and observed him as a youngster saw. He expected attention, not simply wanted it. He frequently obtained it by mocking and harming others who were unable to defend themselves. His first pastime was to make the Queen's guards appear irate. Andrew walked by them, making fun of their rigid stance and pulling faces to calm them down, at a time when most children would have fled because they were frightening. He became more irate and intensified his antics to catch their attention when they didn't reply. It was more than idle mischief. Even the silent regulations that the men protecting his family observed seemed to have no bearing on the youngster. But when he wasn't being mean to people, he was incredibly mean. His negative attitude also extended to animals. When the family dogs screamed, he reportedly laughed and kicked them. He also used sticks to strike horses' legs for amusement. The royal men were so incensed at the behavior one day that they took action. The young prince was seized and flung directly into a heap of horse manure. After that, they buried him in the filth he enjoyed spreading to others, and covered him with fresh manure. They undoubtedly believed he deserved it, despite the fact that it was a terrible punishment. Staff also disobeyed royal regulations to reprimand him on other occasions. In another instance, a palace footman retaliated against him after he continued to make fun of him. Ultimately, he struck the child so forcefully that he suffered a black eye. The Queen refused to accept the footman's resignation since he believed he would be sacked immediately. Even she seemed to agree that Andrew needed to be punished for his nasty behavior, even if it came from one of her employees. He was not only cruel to staff and animals. Edward, his younger brother, was also included. Everything they did became a contest thanks to Andrew. In public, he made fun of him by stealing his cakes, pushing him, and causing him pain. It wasn't a game of brotherhood. The term was assault. Those who witnessed it observed a child who was constantly trying to establish his superiority and was high on the sensation that he was in control. At school, he had a horrible reputation that followed him everywhere like a plague. He was nicknamed Baby Grumpling by his friends at prep and subsequently at Gordonstown due to his outbursts and the cruel laughs he used to mock others. He wasn't the charming prince that others had dreamed for. He was the pampered brat who was constantly ridiculing other people. Even as he grew older, his thoughts remained the same. The situation only became more difficult. It wasn't like a prince. It was like a bully. At gatherings, he allegedly tugged at the gowns and buttons of female palace employees and yelled at them to smell the pâté. When he went camping, he allegedly tore down fly sheets and threw them into rivers, ruining other people's shelters and leaving his buddies angry and soaked. It seemed to him like another joke. For those who were forced to endure it, it was shameful. His employees said it best when they said that he lacked the civility one would anticipate from a royal child. The servants, accustomed to authority, discipline, and deference, found his language startling. Instead, they observed a spoilt dictator in miniature, not a mischievous child, as he hurled objects to the ground and yelled commands that contained foul language, such as "pick that up." By the time Andrew was old enough to wear a uniform, he had already established a solid reputation within the palace gates. He was neither a strong but capable Anne, nor a handsome heir like Charles. The employees were afraid of dealing with him. They couldn't stand the boy, a boy whose concept of respect was dominating, whose idea of pleasure was being cruel, and whose arrogance seemed to grow with his size. They sincerely hoped he would move on. But things continued to worsen. By the late 1990s, Andrew was beginning removing his public persona. Reports of wrongdoing were no longer the only aspect of the scandals. They were about money, people, and a certain hard-to-hide arrogance. Andrew was becoming more and more involved in things that would permanently disgrace him, while his brother Charles feigned a transformation following Diana's passing. His business relationships were among the first to exhibit signs of weakness. The benefits of being a king allowed him to spend lavishly, but his reckless business dealings caused him problems. He allegedly struck arrangements with dubious individuals, typically men who were under investigation overseas. The royal family buried the majority of these scandals in silence, but he was always followed by rumors of pay-for-access frauds. Claims that Andrew was abusing his royal authority to arrange business meetings for large sums of money swiftly grew out of what had begun as minor favors for friends. Despite the palace's denials, the facts continued to surface. He was obsessed with younger women in addition to the money. After he divorced Sarah Ferguson, Andrew couldn't shake the thought of a middle-aged man pursuing women half his age. He flaunted his connections with socialites and models, many of whom were in their teens or early 20s. According to his driver, he observed roughly 10 women coming and going from his apartment in Bangkok. It was distressing for the family in addition to being embarrassing. Reporters began referring to him as Randy Andy, a nickname that persisted for decades and made the Queen's son a tabloid joke. His employees discussed behind his back how he was unable to avoid bad company, even within the castle. He then rose to fame as a result of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Long before Epstein was convicted, people saw Andrew on his private plane, at his house in the Caribbean, and at his home in New York. Images of Andrew strolling with Epstein during his initial incarceration left many wondering questions that he has never been able to address. The incorrect link wasn't the only one. He was conceited. Andrew stepped up his friendship with Epstein, calling him a devoted friend and declaring that he had no remorse about being with her, while other influential men withdrew. Ultimately, that one decision would cost him dearly. But it wasn't just Epstein that made him feel horrible. Behind the royal walls, staff members were compiling their own confidential list of grievances. Maids claimed that rather than being treated like employees in a modern home, they were treated more like servants in an antique court. To close the shades a few inches from his feet, Andrew ordered one woman run up 7 flights of stairs, according to one maid. She claimed that they were placed down and subjected to verbal abuse that was intended to shatter them. Another person recalled him shouting at everyone for making a minor error with his teddy bears and informing them that only he could handle them. In private, he was referred to as the Prince of Darkness, due to his treatment of the Queen's employees. Andrew put individuals down in addition to shouting instructions. According to gardeners, he scolded them for rearranging the leaves. According to those who drove him, if a car was 5 minutes late, he would scream. According to one former equestrian, Andrew gave them the impression that they were hitting bags. After being kept under wraps for years, these stories gradually found their way to the media, and each one got worse. When he traveled overseas, people noticed signs of this sense of privilege. He was supposed to represent Britain in trade and conduct himself with dignity. He reportedly reprimanded foreign employees, treated waiters rudely, and made requests for accommodations more like a king than a diplomat. He reportedly made a hotel employee weep by shouting about how hot his room was during one occasion in the Middle East. According to the diplomats accompanying him, it was their responsibility to handle Andrew's anger. People were much more repulsed by his private life. The two appeared to be locked in a poor relationship that was beneficial to both of them after Sarah Ferguson's personal issues, such as being caught using money to set Andrew up with other people. Despite living together, they were not wed. They didn't care if they damaged the government's reputation. They just relished the benefits of living as royalty. Critics claimed that they were acting in ways that would have damaged anyone's reputation while hiding behind their titles. By the early 2000s, things were getting worse for Andrew. He wasn't tolerated like Edward, nor was he liked or revered like Charles or Anne. They teased him. The picture was terrible again, and his moniker was changed from Randy Andy to Air Miles Andy, as it was revealed that he frequently used public funds to pay for pointless trips on private jets and helicopters. In a Britain struggling with economic injustice, a guy who was mired in the past failed to recognize how out of touch he appeared. An increasing number of palace employees voiced their opinions each year. They claimed that he was utterly selfless, status-obsessed, and eager to be spotted with celebrities. Even during family gatherings, he stood out due to his pride. According to rumors, Princess Diana allegedly claimed that Andrew was the Queen's son, who was the most pampered and least intelligent. This time, even her adversaries appeared to concur with her. There were all the warning signs: anger, entitlement, strained friendships, and careless financial waste. However, nobody stopped him. Because his mother loved him unconditionally, Andrew remained out of sight and out of mind. Until Epstein's world collapsed and Andrew followed suit, he did this. The prince was thereafter viewed by everyone as something far worse than a pampered monarch. In addition to damaging Andrew's reputation, the next controversy would permanently sever his ties to the royal family. Things started to shift in 2010. Jeffrey Epstein had recently been released from prison for soliciting a kid. Numerous strong men fled from him. Andrew made a mistake. As if the event had never happened, he was spotted grinning while strolling through Central Park with Epstein. The impact of just one photo was explosive. For the first time, the public witnessed the Queen's son strolling beside a convicted sexual offender. Then Virginia arrived. In 2015, her name suddenly became well known. She claimed that Andrew was one of the men she was coerced into having sex with after Epstein trafficked her while she was a teenager. She mentioned that she had met him 3 times. She said it was always set up by Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner. The photo was the most damning evidence. Andrew is holding 17-year-old Geoffrey in his arm. In the backdrop, Ghislaine may be seen grinning. The response from Andrew was no. "I've never met her," he said. Although specialists examined the image and found no evidence of tampering, he even suggested that it might not be authentic. He appeared much more desperate after giving his response. The house was a frenzied place. They made evasive remarks and claimed that the Queen's authority would prevent anyone from criticizing him in an attempt to shield him for years. However, the evidence grew stronger. According to flight records, Andrew was traveling with Epstein. People reported seeing them together in New York, London, and the Caribbean. The regal front appeared stronger with each detail. By 2019, the situation had gotten out of control. In order to clear his identity, Andrew made the decision to do an interview with the BBC. The ensuing discussion was among the worst in the royal family's history. He initially gave absurd justifications that made him a laughingstock all over the world. He informed her that he was with his daughter at a Pizza Express in Woking the evening she claimed they had met in a pub in London. He knew the detail sounded ridiculous, yet he repeated it repeatedly as if it were a strong justification. On the internet, memes took a serious accusation and made it into a show. Then the sweating comment was made. As they danced, Geoffrey informed her that Andrew was drenched in sweat. In response, Andrew said he was unable to perspire due to a health issue at the time. His trust was instantly damaged by the bizarre and implausible explanation he provided. It was more than simply denial now. It was a delusion. The worst thing, though, was his tone. Instead of caring about Epstein's victims, Andrew focused on himself. After he was released from prison, he claimed that staying with Epstein was simple. Although he acknowledged that it was a mistake, he swiftly clarified that it was beneficial because it allowed him to confront her and end their relationship. He seemed to be explaining to the millions of people watching why he was so close to being killed. The response was immediate. The interview was described as a car collision, a train wreck, and a calamity. Not even the Queen could protect him this time. In a few days, Andrew announced his resignation from his royal duties. A flight took place. For the first time in contemporary history, a high-ranking royal was expelled due to a controversy. The devastation didn't stop there. He was cut off from donors. Universities revoked his honorary positions. He was expelled from the military units. Once the Queen's favored son, Andrew now posed a threat to everything associated with the kingdom. Nevertheless, Geoffrey continued. She accused Andrew of sexually assaulting her and filed a lawsuit against him in a U.S. civil court in 2021. His attorneys made every effort to get the lawsuit dismissed, arguing that the allegations were untrue, that he was shielded by technicalities, and that she had no case. It was unsuccessful. The judge allowed the matter to proceed to trial. For Andrew, that meant only one thing. He would either settle out of the public eye or face Geoffrey in court. Andrew got married in the beginning of 2022. He allegedly gave Geoffrey $12 million. The majority believed it to be an admission of guilt, although the palace denied this. Many believed he had purchased his way out of accountability. To make matters worse, there were several questions regarding the source of the funding. Some believed that in order to protect the crown, the Queen had covertly funded the transaction. Andrew was the last surviving brother of Prince Philip by the time of his funeral. His presence on the balcony at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee was prohibited. At her funeral, he had to remove his military uniform, which forced him to stand awkwardly as his siblings donned theirs. Everyone he harmed had their wants fulfilled in every instant. No, it wasn't like that. All of Andrew's official military titles were taken away from him when Charles became king. He was informed that he was no longer authorized to speak on behalf of the crown. They slammed the doors of regal life. Like everyone else, he had to request protection because his security crew had even been reduced. It was the worst thing that could have happened to Andrew. Eliminating the virus and safeguarding the throne was like surgery for Charles. The 2023 coronation made the division evident. Every moment of Andrew's embarrassment was captured on film. He arrived in the plain suit of an unimportant family member, rather than in a uniform or formal robes. His siblings donned attire that represented their might and walked with purpose. Andrew strode about clumsily, his face displaying rage but suppressing it. Body language experts noticed that he was not like his family, the way William avoided looking him in the eye and Charles hardly gave him a glance. Despite having his own issues, Harry appeared more acceptable than the Duke. There were other occasions when he was alone. Cameras captured the moment once more during the Easter service that year. William and Charles moved forward and joined the crowd. In contrast, Andrew was far behind, and his own nieces and nephews did not even notice him. Every gesture and glance contained hints. The royal family's ghost was now Andrew. However, the private lives continued to leak while being out of the spotlight. After additional employees came forward with recollections that wounded him, he was much more despised. According to one, Andrew would expect the staff to clean up after him without grumbling, even when his clothing were piled up all over his bedroom. According to another, he would yell at staff if the water wasn't heated to his preferred temperature, and insisted on baths being prepared at precise temperatures. One servant recalled being instructed to flatten Andrew's shoelaces with an iron. Although the details sounded bizarre, they revealed a privileged man who was unable to act appropriately.